When I lost myself, and I lost him too, everything's so romantic, epic, intoxicating, just like my man. I was receiving love, receiving a man who adored me, receiving a life of turquoise sea and warm sun. And in those early days, our connection was effortless. But there's something they don't tell you. Welcome to Sacred Soul Sparks podcast, where devotion meets desire and the feminine awakens in her full magnetic power. I'm Michelle Cross, a guide for women reclaiming their sensuality, their voice, and the sacred union within. Each episode is a raw transmission from my soul to yours, inviting you to come home to the truth of who you are. Wild, soft, untamed, and deeply powerful. So let's dive in. When I lost myself and lost him too. This is my love story about the menopause, the moon blood, and the marriage I almost lost. So when I lost myself, of course, I lost connection to him, and it wasn't sudden, it was quiet. Like sand slipping through your fingers, one grain at a time. Perfect. This is my story about our love that looks perfect from the outside, the kind of love that people comment on when they scroll past a picture or a reel of us on the socials and say, "I love your love." And yes, we are deeply devoted. But behind every curated photograph or reel, there have been days that I could barely look at myself in the mirror, let alone hold his gaze. And this is my reminder that even the most beautiful unions are living, breathing things. They weather the storms that you may never see. So some days I could still pretend to hold on, and other days I looked down and realized that my hands were empty. What I didn't see at first, and maybe you don't see in your life right now, is the moment when you start to abandon yourself, abandon the connection in your relationship that will start to dissolve too. Not because the love has gone, not because the man has changed, but because the thread that once tied you to yourself has begun to fray. And this is a story about my menopause, about my moon blood, about my marriage, about almost losing everything and realizing that in the truth, what I lost first was me. Have you ever found yourself in a relationship questioning it, questioning who you are in it, or whether it will survive? Yes? Well, me too. And I want you to know this. It doesn't have to be the end. There are ways to keep love alive, to deepen intimacy, to reawaken what feels lost. And this is that story. Maybe you've heard of the heroine's journey or the hero's journey. You'll know that it's not all shiny swords and epic returns. This is a part of the map where the woman, through choice, circumstance, or even sheer survival, disconnects from her own feminine essence. And I lived this. Back in the day, I used to live in London, fast, bright, full of creative fire. And in 2009, I had intentionally been calling in my most conscious, committed beloved. And part of that was saying no more to situationships and booty calls. And because I was new to Tantra, I sat in reverence to Shiva. And through Kashmir Shaivism Tantra, I chanted Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Namah Shivaya over and over. And then I went on a holiday to Barbados and I met a man. And I thought this would just be the most beautiful island lover fling. The sun, the sea, the sand, the skin. The time after we had first consummated our love on Christmas Day, after dancing all night, he said to me the next day, "What now?" And my reply was, "I don't know. I don't live here. You live here, I live there." And his response shocked me. He said, "I think you're the one." Well, my first thought was, what the? I must have been really good. I thought this would be a holiday romance to tuck away as a story for later years, except it wasn't. And 3 months later, after I'd flown home, after declaring that I missed him, I then also declared I wasn't interested in anything long distance because there was a situationship kind of story coming up and I just wasn't interested. My no was firm. But he kept calling and calling. And these were the days before WhatsApp, before Facebook, before Instagram. And one day he simply said, "I can't get you out of my head." And of course I melted. And that was the return from 2011 to 2014. We lived oceans apart, yet the thread between us only thickened and deepened. And what I love about this story is that my man's country, my country now, Barbados, the country's flag has a trident, and the trident is what Shiva holds. And so my Rastaman husband is a dancer, wild, with dreadlocks flowing. Epitomizes Shiva for me. And I had called him in. And yet in June of that 2014, I began saying a different mantra that would literally change everything. That mantra was, I am open to receive. It was about receiving his masculine essence and me softening into my feminine, especially sexually. And the truth is, the seeds of all of this were planted long before him, because as a little girl, I used to tell anyone who would listen, one day I'm going to live abroad, somewhere with endless sun. One day I'll be married on the sand, barefoot, the sand between my toes. And we did exactly that. We didn't start on a beach. We eloped to Gretna Green, the little Scottish town just across the borders where runaways and romantics have been saying yes for centuries, because my mother lived there, so it was so fitting. And I've shared this story before that within 3 months of saying I am open to receive, I was married, selling up everything in London and moving to Barbados. And so the following year we had our Barbados blessing, and I did indeed get married barefoot, sand between my toes. And so it felt like my childhood promises were finally catching up with me. Everything was so romantic, epic, intoxicating, just like my man. I was receiving the love, receiving my man who adored me, receiving the life of turquoise seas and warm sun. And in those early years, our connection was effortless. There is something they don't tell you about moving continents for love. The physical relocation is just the first step. The spiritual, the emotional, there is an initiation, and yet mine was about to come. But before it did, When I first arrived on the island, before the cracks began to show, I experienced the most profound activation of my life. Some might call it a Shaktipat. And during simple breath work, I literally merged with the goddess Kali. And Kali is my goddess, my Ishta Devata. And my body was trembling with power, yet grounded like a mountain. And my heart cracked open so profoundly as my body was sensually moving. And I heard this woman singing Jai Ma. And then I realized it was me, and I was just crying tears of grace. And the merging was just pure ecstasy. I certainly was open to receive. It was the most liberating, enlightening moment that I had ever lived. High without chaos, blissful without escaping myself. And I thought that this was going to be my new baseline. And when my husband came to pick me up, he couldn't believe how I was. I was so high in love, wild and free and happy. And we just bathed in this ecstasy together. Then boom, soon after, I was told to quiet it, to contain it, to make it smaller by the local women. And my shutting down began, my business began to crumble. Sisterhood on the island became quite strained, and I was simply told, we don't do it like that here. And then the thick of menopause began with small signs. The weight gain, the PMS that hit like a hurricane, anxiety in the middle of the night, and then my bleeding stopped. And we had been trying for a child at this time, and in that moment, panic gripped me. Panic that was so deep it had rewired my body as if overnight, because the meaning I had given to my womb was suddenly gone, and the grief was so layered. Losing my moon blood meant losing the rituals that had anchored me for years. I would give my blood to the earth. I would honor my lineage. I would weave my cycles into the cycles of the moon. But it also meant that a biological door had closed, and the child that we had dreamed of would never come. And it put a strain on my sexuality. I questioned my desirability, never by him, but always by me. And I didn't slide into the numbness. I fought it. I lashed out. And my own Kali side was so fierce. Yet if you know the goddess Kali, she's a goddess of death and of truth and of rebirth. But at the center is pure love. And love is at the center for me and my man. So through menopause, my nervous system was in flight mode most days. I stopped recognizing the woman in the mirror. Her face softer, skin changing with every surge of heat. I literally felt like the skin running up my spine was burning. And my libido plummeted because everything was turning inwards. I became anxious and teary and withdrawn, and it was this deep grief cycle because I was alone. I felt alone, even though I very much had the most loving man beside me. And maybe you have felt this. And then another boom. We were scammed, losing a huge sum of money, and it felt like every layer was being stripped away at once. It was the slowest death of identity, of vibrancy, of joy. And I really hear a lot of this with my clients in menopause, and even more so in post-menopause, where if they don't seek help, it's harder. And they often say, I don't recognize who I am anymore. And whilst they say that menopause is an initiation and a rite of passage, when you feel alone, it's amplified. But being with a mentor guides a woman to enter these initiations and alchemize it. And so for me, our love story, through it all, my husband stayed and was utterly committed. He not only stayed, he loved me unconditionally, even when I pushed him to the edge. I think he only ever said once, maybe it's over, and then he immediately retracted it. Every curve that softened, every mood that I had that broke like a wave, or every tear-streaked night or quiet morning, he was always my Shiva. Getting quite emotional saying this. His pure, steady, masculine, that held such sacred space for my wild, raging, grieving storms. And this energy that everyone feels through the reels is his love for me. And I want you to know that even when my libido dimmed because of the grief, I never once stopped being intimate. Our lovemaking changed, and it evolved and deepened to support the change that I was going through. And through the tantric practices, we slowed down, we softened, and sometimes intimacy was just lying together in the stillness, his hands over my heart, and our breathing falling in rhythm. We are the best of friends as much as lovers. And even in our intense times, we've laughed until we've cried. We've danced barefoot in the kitchen. We tease each other like teenagers. And sometimes the intimacy is tangled limbs in bed, and sometimes it's him catching my eye across the room in a way that still makes me blush. And the key that unlocks everything for us is commitment. He is so committed, and commitment is why I moved to Barbados, because I had said no to the universe way back then. My man has always honoured my tantric journey, from my rituals to my moon blood, with my moon blood, to the soft, slow, somatic practices. He's committed to me and unconditionally held me when I've roared, when I've grieved, when I've doubted, when I've remembered who I am. He has never lost sight of me, and so me sharing this love story is more about honouring him. How, as much as he held me, he would stand up to me and say it like it is. This is where my tantric and somatic practices, I feel, saved me and saved us. I've immersed myself in breathwork, Kundalini Shakti activations, erotic movements, and the kind of mentorship that has stripped away the old stories and rewired my body for aliveness and acceptance. Acceptance of the wise woman within. And this is the work that I now hold sacred space for women, and they may not even have a challenging menopausal story. They may be the women who are just ready to reignite their passion or reclaim their sensuality, or are oh so curious that there is more. And there is always more. Because I know that when she comes alive again, everything in her world changes, including her relationship. This is why I speak so fiercely and so passionately about Shakti and Yoni and the somatic practices, because they are the ones that have kept a thread of aliveness in my body when desire had all but gone. It was ritual after ritual so that I could find my way back to me and also back to him. The turning point in our love story came when I stopped expecting him to meet me in my feminine, and I began to meet myself in my masculine. My inner Shiva became the container for my Shakti to pour into, and I invoked the lighter face of Kali with Lalita, the goddess of the erotic. And that's when the polarity returned. That's when our intimacy shifted back into deep devotion. And so now our love has evolved into something even more romantic. The most romantic part of me couldn't have even scripted this. My libido is alive, lit like a flame that's been patiently waiting for every breath to just seduce me deeper. Our intimacy is deeper, wilder, and yet more playful than it's ever been. I no longer look outside of myself for sisterhood or validation that I once thought I needed. Everything I need is right here in me, in him, in us. My life feels so abundant with me, him, us, my clients, my purpose, my pleasure. And the sex is a meeting place for our souls, a temple where Lalita herself dances between us, softening the fire without dimming the heat. It's taken years, yes, but I now live in the sweet paradox of Shakti's wildness and Shiva's stillness. And this is the bliss I didn't know was waiting beyond the descent. This is the sacred union we pull back into each other again and again. This is the rebirth. I am not the woman I was when I moved here. I'm not even the woman I was in 2021, gripped with grief and hot flushes. I'm sovereign. I'm a sacred union within myself. And our marriage mirrors this. After navigating the deepest valleys and rising in the peaks, our marriage is richer, wilder, and more devotional than ever. The little girl who dreamed of barefoot wedding by the sea couldn't have ever imagined this. A love that is deeper than the sand and the sea romance. A self that is more alive than the woman I thought I was becoming back then. At our Barbados blessing, we stood barefoot in the sand and poured 2 champagne flutes of sand, his and mine, into a kalesha pot from India. And we were told, if you can separate these grains of sand, you can separate. And it was simple, symbolic, and sacred. And it's a reminder that even when life grinds us down, our essence can't be unbound. Because this isn't just my story, it's a story women have lived for centuries, a story of losing yourself in the storms and finding your way back to the shore of your own body, whatever phase of womanhood you're in. What I know now is that when life grinds us down, our essence never goes. And this is why I guide women through this heroine's journey, to help them to rewrite their own love story from the inside out. In my world, we work in seasons and cycles and devotion of deep, deep work. it's 6 months or a year or two, because true transformation isn't rushed. It's not just a weekend retreat. It's a descent, an awakening, a remembering. And when we walk it together, the journey becomes less about the drama of the story and more about rewriting and recoding the narrative so that you may rise. Your softness is your strength, and you will meet yourself with more sovereignty than ever before. I know how to guide women through this because I've lived it. I know what it means to look in the mirror and not recognize yourself. I know what it costs to stay silent in your struggle. And I know the courage it takes to ask for help. And that's the courage I wish I had found sooner. So if you are in this slow erosion right now, if your connection to yourself is thin or your relation feels like it's slipping, you're not broken, sister. You are in a descent, and there is a way through. This is the heroine's journey, the reclamation. The way home isn't rushing to reclaim the woman you were. It's about creating sacred space for the woman you are becoming, honoring, nurturing, and celebrating all of her. I hope our love story, my own love story with me, has stirred a spark within you. I'd love you to share it with me, or share this with a sister who needs to hear this. And if you wish to enter my mentoring, check the link in the description. I thank you so much for following my love story. It means the world to me. Much love.